us. We're really looking forward to this session.
Please go ahead, ma'am. We are live now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Upasana Arora, and today's topic is very close to my heart because it is very relevant these days, and not only these days, it's our ancient dharohar. We can say that India is the place where we were not using allopathy. We were actually depending on all these natural herbs and all those nutraceuticals which are extracting from food and vegetables and herbs. So today's topic is relevant because in COVID era, everybody wants to boost their immunity. They actually want to cool and calm their self, and they want to be healthy when they are at home. So this is the best way. We cannot pop up all the time allopathy medicine, all the time, all minerals and vitamins. So these kind of things which we are going to present today are really, we have very good panelists today, and they are going to, enlighten us from their knowledgeable talk. So now I would like to invite Ira ji. She will guide us and she will say few very, very motivating words to us. So Miss Ira, please join us. Miss Ira Singhal.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. Today's session in these times and COVID times is especially relevant for all of us. And ASSOCHAM at its level has been making efforts all this while to promote health and wellness. In fact, today's session is just one such session in a series of events, starting from Sunday-based yogas to many, many more lectures and such sessions wherein we all learn a lot more about how to stay healthy. And we must remember that it's the lifestyle which, when compounded with infectious diseases, is what is taking lives in these times. So it's even more vital that we all maintain good health, we all stay healthy, we all do our best to not get at least the lifestyle diseases. And I'm very honored to welcome all the panelists and all of you today on this session, which I hope shall be very rewarding for all of us, and we'll learn a lot more as we go along. And I hope we all stay healthy and stay safe. So thank you and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us.
So thank you, Ira ji. Now we are going to start this panel discussion, and our today's moderator is Mr. Arun Mishra ji. So he is going to take this session further. Mr. Arun Mishra ji, please come.
Thank you, Upasana ji. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, but your voice is not very, your pitch is low.
Is it better
Arun,
now?
your voice is muffled.
Quite
Your
feeble.
voice is
Yeah.
muffled.
Is it better now?
No.
No.
I don't know what happened. I mean, it was working quite okay, but let me just try again. Is it better? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
We are not able to hear you.
It's not very clear, actually.
It's quite feeble, Arun.
Okay, let me try my microphone.
I think you should log out and then log in.
That's true.
Yeah. So meanwhile, we can just, we should remember our Ramayana when Hanumanji has taken that Sanjeevani for Sanjeevani Bhakti. He has taken whole Parvat with him. So these, herbal things are actually very important. And we were using only herbal things only. And Ayurveda is the therapy we were using before we just started this modern allopathy. And it was very useful and very good for the health, because you can see our ancestors were so healthy mentally and physically both. Nowadays we are struggling with depression and lots of problems. If we will switch over to this again, and I think then we will be again feel that energetic, and our age will not affect us. As our, forefathers they were at 90, they were so active, so smart. And what they were doing, they were using all these things only. They were using all the herbal products, and Vaid ji and Hakim ji were treating them, and all. Even these days, when this turmeric thing is so much on, everybody is using turmeric juice. It is really helpful. So हमें वापस अपनी जड़ों में जाना चाहिए, अपनी धरोहर और विरासत को वापस लाना चाहिए. And so now Arun ji is here. Yeah, Arun ji, please. Arun ji, please speak so we can understand that you are audible or not.
Better? Can you hear me?
No, it's not.
It's even
Yeah,
it's even
Very-
more feeble than the past one. Arun.
yeah, it was better before.
Yeah, that's true.
Can someone take over while I manage to?
Now it is better. Now it is coming.
It's okay.
Yeah. Is
Yeah.
it better now? Okay. I
Yeah.
don't know what's this is playing up, but anyway, finally we are here. Thank you very much, Upasana ji. And we have eminent panel members here, and we will go through some of the themes and discussions. And I think the theme is relevant and right for today's world. And couple of thoughts I'll leave for the panel members to look at and also discuss, so that we sort of come to a space where we look at the challenges and opportunities. I guess that's where we will perhaps end up in today's discussion. I think one, if you look at micronutrient and role in our health and wellness, it's well established. And some of our panel members today may re-emphasize again that what is role of micronutrients in our life from wellness point of view. One area I see which is becoming more and more prominent is one, to attain your full capability. Your human capability. That's one role that micronutrient plays, whether it's a growth, whether it's a brain development, whether it's immunity development, and so on. More recently, what we have been learning is that it helps us to protect as well, which is around immunity, and we talk about it, and we have seen a lot of discussion in the ecosystem. So those are two sort of spaces that perhaps we may explore further a bit, well established, but it will be relevant to explore that area, especially when it comes to herbal nutraceuticals. Now, when it comes to micronutrients, there are various sources that we have seen are adopted by consumers. It could be plain supplements that we find in the market. We could call it synthetic source. We could call it chemical source. Some of them are plant source as well. Then the other space is food. I mean, for example, carrot, apple, and many food and fruits and vegetables that we know they are source of vitamins and minerals which are required. But there are challenges, and we know, and perhaps our panel will dwell upon those areas as well. And the third is that how do we make it more herbal space? How do we make it more available from clinical point of view, from scientific point of view, and make it more effective? So that's sort of third area we are looking at. I think it would be good to also debate around challenges and opportunities, and that's where we have number of our colleagues on this panel who are expert in this space, especially around extraction, manufacturing, bioavailability, standardization, those sort of spaces to ensure, again, robust effectiveness and quality of the products. I guess what we are looking at is an opportunity, as Upasanaji mentioned, for the society to have alternate supplementation route for micronutrients, whether it's a vitamins or minerals, but in much more robust manner, and where efficacy, safety, and quality of the product is guaranteed. And that's where we have an opportunity as a country as well. As rightly said, that we have long experience from Ayurveda and from our culture, from our Dadi ke nuske, I think how do we infuse more science in that space is something that government is trying. Many institutions are trying. I'm happy to see someone from NIN as well, Dr. Kumar, and would love to hear his view as well. So that's sort of lot of discussion today. Let me invite my panel members one by one. And in between, Payal, if there are questions, I believe those will be posted on the chat. And then towards end of it, if time permits, then we can have a discussion that what are we filtering and potentially what's the next step from here. With that, let me invite Dr. Mazid. He's chairman and founder of Sabina's Group. You will see his bio on the screen, so I'm not going to read through. It's a fabulous, incredible journey he has gone through, and we would love to hear his point of view from industry point of view and pioneer in this space. That how do you see this evolving? How do you see science going? How do you see consumer behavior going? How do you see manufacturing evolving in this sort of space? So let me, without spending more time, let me invite Dr. Mazid for his remarks and share his thinking. Dr. Mazid.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank ASSOCHAM for inviting me and come and give this few minutes presentation. Now, I'm not sharing anything, I'll talk. At the beginning of the conversation, you talked about micronutrient. There is a lot of research going on in the micronutrient area focused on COVID-19 because sufficiency of micronutrient is essential to prevent or ward off COVID-19. And my associate, Dr. Lakshmi Munkar, will talk more about that one. I'll come to my key points of today. To make Ayurveda globally acceptable, the non-standardized Ayurveda was standardized into nutraceuticals. That is where the journey of Ayurveda into the America has begun. Ayurveda has answers to many of the problems that we face today, including the COVID-19 pandemic, with the right approach. In fact, we have done research on that one, and we are now getting started with a larger research. With the right approach and in association with the mainstream medicine, Ayurveda could be the answer for after COVID ill effects also. Subsequent to the market development of Ayurvedic products, a lot of cultivation efforts have started in India also. Sami Sabinsa group, that is my group, pioneered the concept of contract farming of medicinal plants in India, created awareness, introduced novel plants into cultivation. Essentially, medicinal plants cultivation has become India's alternate crop for the farmers. The export of medicinal plant extracts will touch 2 billion by 2025. While the whole world is enjoying the benefits of Ayurveda and the ancient science, we are having difficulties in the country of origin. That I'll come later. In the name of biodiversity, conservation, and sustainability, it is injustice to ask the suffering small-scale Ayurvedic manufacturers to pay cess and call it access benefit sharing. Now, of course, Government of India is the biggest sustainability expert. They provide medicinal plant farmers subsidies. There's one. And Government of India authorized 4,000 crores using National Medicinal Plan to go out and cultivate medicinal plants across India. That is because the Government of India realized the huge potential of Ayurveda and the nutraceutical industry. And keeping that in mind, we must all join hands and work together to promote our Ayurveda and nutraceutical industry and help the farmers. The biodiversity regulations must be facilitative and not to wipe out the Ayurveda industries and connected stakeholders. Now, this is my prepared speech, but coming back to the minerals, there's a lot of research going on, and that will take the center stage in the months to come against COVID-19. Thank you. I'm
Thank
done.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mazid. Very useful. We'll come back to you on some of the points you talked about, especially around Ayurveda, whole phytonutraceutical sort of space, which is evolving, and biodiversity. So I think there is a ecosystem question or discussion, and we would love to hear your view. With that, let me invite our next guest panel member, Ms. Ishi Khosla, who is clinical nutritionist, columnist, author, entrepreneur, researcher, and welfare worker. We would love to hear your view from those multiple lenses in your expertise, from nutritionist point of view, from columnist point of view, from entrepreneur point of view, researcher point of view. How do you see sort of herbal nutraceutical space, which could cut across from Ayurveda to phytonutraceutical or pure nutraceutical space? How do you see that evolving? And how do you see the chatter in the ecosystem, which might be affecting the direction we take in future? And also at the same time, how do you see the policy level evolution, especially around the subject, which could be quite deep in our culture and history, yet modernizing very rapidly at the same time?
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Very well. Thank you.
So it's a privilege to be a part of this very prestigious forum and to be amongst all of you to share such an important part of our being today. And like never before, the pandemic has brought the spotlight and the conversations onto diet, immunity, and along with that, traditional wisdom. I represent the area of diet and nutrition, and as a practicing nutritionist for over 25 years, all I would say is, to begin with, I have always used traditional herbs, irrespective of whether there is a long-term, well-controlled trial for a particular herb, because I believe in them and I know that that's common sense and they have existed. So I have never had one system versus the other. I have always had an integrated approach. And having practiced in a heart hospital, I do see the perceptions of the practitioners of mainstream orthodox medicine not really 100% aligned always. And that's a very big challenge, which needs to be addressed by such forums and such conversations, that how do we overcome the mindsets until even as just as recently, I would say, as within the pandemic time, I have hardcore medicine practitioners, my friends, who have completely dismissed the use of things like haldi, gulugului, and whatever else we're talking about, amla and all the karas, and they completely believe that it is the steroids and the medicines which really work and save a patient. So we have a long gap. While there may be people who are aligned, but there is a huge community there who is not. So I think that's one very big gap. But I would just like to share a few things before we move on to another part of this conversation, which is that it's not just herbs. It's not just the system of one medicine. Every pathy has its strengths and weaknesses, and therefore we must never feel threatened by one or the other. But there is no denying the fact that for every pill there are many ills, and for every there is no pill for every ill. So we do understand that. So we do want to keep the burden of pills low, irrespective of whatever we are doing. And firstly, in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic, there are a few things which we go beyond the nutraceutical space, beyond. I would really want to say that there are why a certain nutraceutical or a plant herb will not work is because we cannot have an oversimplified view of any of these herbs. We need to take a holistic, integrated picture. And for instance, COVID-19, let's look at a patient. We know a lot of, we don't know everything about COVID-19, but we know a lot now than ever before. And then what is it that makes a key difference between who gets the infection and who doesn't, who makes it and who doesn't make it, who goes to hospital and who doesn't? There is something underlying all of these. And what is the simple thing we know today is 94% of people who have died of COVID are people who have had comorbidities, whether it's obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, or heart disease. Now, what is common in all of these conditions? Which really means that 94% die with comorbidities, that 6% only die of COVID itself, of the disease itself, which is saying a lot. So what is the key difference is simply inflammation. And inflammation really is a part of all these diseases, and the starting point of all diseases, in fact, that is something which mainstream science has accepted. So I feel we need to define the goals of a good preventive strategy as follows. I have 4 points here, which I'm going to share with you. The first is to build immunity through the right nutrients, through the right macronutrients, whether it's proteins, fats, carbohydrates, etc., and through the right micronutrients, be it vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, and there are so many more. When we talk about mortality with COVID-19, one is the comorbidity issue and the other is a vitamin D issue. Simply put, a low vitamin D itself can make the difference between whether you make it or you don't. And there are several studies which are going on, but one study has clearly indicated, it's a large study, that those people who had in ICUs levels of vitamin D less than 19 nanograms per deciliter have all died. I mean, nobody made it. So there are very clear correlations between vitamin D and our immune system and emerging diseases, but we still know a lot to say that this is an important goal to achieve. And when I speak about the second goal would be to manage inflammation. Inflammation, like I said earlier, is the starting point for all diseases and lowers your immune system. So what are the factors which increase inflammation in our bodies? Today, we know which include chemicals and all the medicines, the pesticides, the processed food, a dysbiosis, which means a bad gut flora, unhealthy gut flora. The fact that, we are also suffering from food sensitivities like never before, be it gluten, be it dairy, be it several others, but primarily wheat sensitivity seems to be, looking at us very obviously, and we find that modern wheat or modern agricultural practices has made us sensitive to this protein. So it's a pro-inflammatory protein, which it wasn't earlier, and it was only inflammatory to certain people, but today it's hitting many more people. So these are conversations which we must have to reduce inflammation, and also talk about anti-inflammatory fats, which include the good fats, which we do not have enough of, the highly polyunsaturated fats, which are pro-inflammatory, and we don't have enough of the anti-inflammatory fats like the N3 and the omega-3 fats. So that is, we can go on and on about inflammation. It will take up too much time, but I just want to put the spotlight on these key issues. So the third is the gut health, the issue of, I already spoke about the importance of the gut microbiome and what we digest. Again, rooted and steeped in traditional wisdom. Our Ayurvedic practitioners knew this way before we have figured it out in modern medicine. But today we are on the same page that all diseases begin in the gut. And there is no dispute. So whether we are treating the immune system, or whether we are treating heart disease, or we are treating anything post-COVID, we need to look at what we are eating and what we are digesting. So that's a very huge conversation which can go on and on. And lastly, like I said earlier, managing weight and waste. That's an important goal as well. So you may be eating the best nutraceutical herbs and the supplements and micronutrients, but if you're large, if you have an high BMI or you have a large waist, a girth, you are at risk for inflammation and a lowered immune system. So these are the 4 points which I think need to be addressed when we talk about the role of nutraceuticals, and everything matters. Each of these things are important, and I am just going to leave it to to this discussion because I know the time is very limited. We also need, of course, to talk about the fact that anti-inflammatory habits are very important, which are a part of the Ayurvedic narrative, which include adequate sleep, which include eating less, which include yoga and meditation, etc., etc. So I would just leave that with the last line that a robust immune system and robust health can only be achieved through good intestines and good nutrition, and the path of the nutraceuticals and the herbal herbs that we have, the wealth of herbs we have in India, can really be an excellent adjunct to this.
Thank you very much, Rishi. Very useful. And I agree. Integrated approach, holistic approach is a way forward. And this has been re-emphasized in this crisis. I mean, just supplementation is important, but may not be enough. We need to look at a holistic picture. And that has been our tradition. That has been our culture. And I think that's where we need to dig deeper to understand where we go from here, especially after this crisis. One, how do we bring some of those best practices for the future, which will help us to avoid the impact of the crisis in future as well. So thank you very much for sharing. We'll pick up some of those threads in our future discussion. Let me invite Mr. Ashish Kumar, who is Managing Director of Dr. Wilmer's Club India Private Limited. His bio is on the screen again. A thorough expert in this space and has led the businesses and turned around the businesses. I'm glad to have you on board as well. Two requests I have. One for all the panel members, if you are able to stick in 5 minutes so that we are able to hear all the views and have time for discussion as well. And second, I think, again, going back to the theme that we discussed, role of nutraceutical, that's one which is sort of well established. But I think important is to look at and probe a bit more in this discussion is challenges and opportunities that we see mostly in herbal nutraceutical space, because that's where today's discussion is, and that's where today the country is as well. There is a huge opportunity, but then there is a lingering on question as well, especially now in data-driven world. We look for data for everything, and that may not be the case for many of the age-old practices that has been proven well. I think that's where the dilemma is, from the government, from the research, from the societies, from the regulators, everywhere. And I think your thoughts around that would be helpful. So again, welcome, Mr. Kumar, and happy to hear your views as well.
Fair enough. Thank you, Arun, and thanks, ASSOCHAM, for conducting this and giving me an opportunity to be a part of this eminent group of panelists. As we started with the industry, I mean, just to give you a perspective of the industry, that the industry which is close to the nutraceutical industry, which is close to $65 billion worldwide in global terms, and this is one of the few industries, rare industry apart from some of the new technologies, which has been growing consistently for the last 10 years in double-digit growth rates. So we are fortunate to be a part of this industry. It's even last year it grew around 15-16%, and if I see the CAGR of the last 10 years, we are more than 10% for the last 10 years. So the growth is phenomenal, and the important part is that the Indian medicine system, Ayurveda, yoga, homeopathy, even though it's more German to start with, but now the prominence of that is very strongly embedded into India more than the German part of it. All these are growing worldwide phenomenally well. If you talk about, just to give you a perspective of how ashwagandha, which is one of the most important herbs in India, worldwide is more importantly known as ashwagandha than Withenia somnifera. So, you go to the German part, French part, they call ashwagandha, and that tells you how things have started to percolate. Certain other countries, if you see also, there also Tulsi is known as Tulsi and not to the scientific name. So this is a good sign which we are seeing. A very from a commercial point of view, if you see the rates of these herbs, ashwagandha actually went 5 times of what it was as the year before. And that tells you the demand supply situation, and that tells you that the demand of these products are very, very high worldwide, not just in India. The same is true with curcumin. This showcases the strength of India, the strength of Ayurveda worldwide. We have a huge subsidiary in US, which is one of the largest nutraceutical manufacturers in the US with the brand name of Alive. And they actually make videos coming into India, how curcumin is, taken up from the farms, and they show that this is the real herbs. So this is, the fact is that apart from the multivitamins and proteins which are being taken, there is a huge scope, huge development of Indian herbs worldwide, and the demand is surging, and we have seen this coming up quite strongly in the last few months and years. The challenges, as Arun said, that one of the biggest challenge which we face and which we need to address is the fact that from a empirical evidence which was there in the books and in the past systems, we need to move towards a scientific based evidence, and this is where a lot of the companies have started, but it's a very slow start, and that is one of the biggest challenge we are facing as a country. When we talk about Ayurveda, maybe in India we still are very much relevant, but if we have to make it quite big globally, and which we see this as a huge possibility post-COVID. Also, the trend moving towards more natural and towards holistic treatment. I think this is where we have to work. I'll just give you very recently we started work with with one of the products which is known as Carica papaya and turmeric. These two products we have taken to AIMS Orissa, because AIMS has got a huge recognition worldwide, and we saw that in the post chemotherapy, thrombocytopenia was quite prevalent, and believe me, the trials are still, the studies are still on, but the first report which we have got, it clearly shows that Carica papaya actually heals big time in post-chemotherapy thrombocytopenia. We were actually looking into an article published by PubMed very recently, and that was purely based on the recent phenomena of COVID, where they saw that, like most other viral infections, even post-COVID, thrombocytopenia comes in, and actually for 36.2% of the patients, the platelet count goes below 150,000. But when we treat them with Carica papaya, it comes back within 2 weeks to a normal level. In severe cases, 58% of the people were treated with Carica papaya. And that tells you the strength of our system. Maybe even though it was based on empirical evidence in the past, but when we start to do a scientific evidence-based modeling, we see a lot of benefits coming out of this. And I see this as a challenge, but I think I would take this opportunity to also thank Dr. Mudeeb that SAMI is leading this big time worldwide in terms of R&D without any doubts. And so fortunate to have these types of company, but we need many, many more companies like this who can actually give inputs on the scientific based study, as we go into the future. And that is going to be the challenge. And that is definitely, if we work on it, it's going to explore the whole market. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish. Very, very insightful. And I agree. There is exponential increase in interest when it comes to herbs and herb-derived products. I mean, ashwagandha is a clear example that you stated. And we see that everywhere around the world. There is a huge recognition. And one thing is common, I don't know if you have noticed as well, is that where we have more science and data, those ingredients are picking well everywhere, actually. And as you rightly said, we need to move towards science. We need to move towards science. We need to move towards data and technology. But thank you. We'll come back to some of those themes as well in our concluding discussion. But let me invite Dr. B. Dinesh Kumar from NIN. We would, and again, it's extensive research experience and expertise Dr. B. Dinesh Kumar has, and I'm very thankful for him to joining us. Dr. Kumar, there is one area that I would like to explore your views and thinking around, especially, I mean, from nutrition point of view, from health and wellness point of view, micronutrient deficiency and role of micronutrients is well established and proven. I think the question which Ashish mentioned as well, move towards science point of view, especially when you come to herbal nutraceutical space, the challenges that we see is around bioavailability and the quantity and therefore biodiversity. That sort of space comes in. From your point of view, what sort of scientific area, what are the scientific development in this space? What are the challenges that you have been addressing and seeing, especially in herbal nutraceutical? That would be very helpful, because I know different pockets of government of India are working at a different pace. So, for example, Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission is developing standards for phytopharmaceuticals. Again, it's about characterizing the ingredients that you get or the extracts that you get. Therefore, you make it more bioavailable. Therefore, you are able to control the formulation better. Therefore, you're able to predict the products better and give more science, robust data for consumer to have confidence in the product that they have. Of course, there's a huge amount of experience and belief behind these products. But I think, as Ashish was saying, move towards science and data. And therefore, we would love to hear your view, Dr. Dinesh Kumar.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you. You have put many things in front of me which are challenging also to answer, but 60-70% I will certainly do my justification to you, sir. Sir, I am giving the greetings from my Director, National of Nutrition. I have superannuated in December. I have joined the Cipra Labs as a scientific advisor. They are planning to develop this center as a destination for developing the nutraceuticals and validation as well as the safety studies to be conducted. So I am there as an advisor. Sir, I may like to take the presentation, I will to say, to introduce you in a reverse fashion, sir. Because the topic selected is keeping COVID in mind. Whether it is a China-Russia collaboration COVID has gifted to us, but the problem is that here the diagnosis of COVID landing to so many diseases and so many organ targets still are not clear, sir. Every day you can go on listening to the news story. Today's story is that 50% of the COVID immune modulation is failing because of the antibiotic resistance, and we are going on giving the antibiotics. Now let us come to the reverse, sir. I am just taking you to one controversy which is going on in Andhra Pradesh with reference to Anandaya medicine. This Anandaya medicine is a cocktail of 16 to 17 herbs, spices and condiments. It's a very simple medicine. Finally, this has been proved or disproved is a big question mark, which I cannot answer at present. But one thing I can certainly say, the safety is there, so people are coming and taking. Now here, the questions which you have raised to me, sir, where we are landing up. Sir, as per one of the acts which are revised in 2012 or 14, that act says that we have to first find out the hidden traditional healer concepts. I may not like to use the word traditional healer word, but I may like to say our traditional concepts have to be validated. Who should validate? That is the biggest question which is in front of you. The question is that, is it Ayush Ministry has to do or any other institute has to do? Definitely private industry are doing their best to bring the product to the best of their abilities. But all the things cannot be done in a private. They have to be interference or interventions from the public sector. So I just want to leave that today failure is the ministry never came forward and owned the responsibility of this medicine, whether it is good or validated or not validated. I'm just going with your second question about the micronutrient deficiency, sir. Since I have worked at NIN, we definitely believe that the food which is now getting is definitely deficiency of micronutrient. Our main concentration is on the hidden hunger. That hidden hunger is because of the micronutrient. One of the panelists was also asking we should standardize the levels of micronutrients like zinc. Of the late, the excess supplementation of zinc is also landing into a toxicity like a liver toxicity. Now, who is monitoring this vigilance? Are we getting the inputs already? Centralized systems are there where we can just say that zinc, this limit has to be maintained. So that means that I'm just leaving the gaps, but I will definitely provide you the answers. Now I'm just going further. Sir, can you believe, sir, today in a climate change situation, the Indian recommended dietary intakes only are 77% less emitting carbon compared to the Western diets of America, which emit 3.8 or like this and go on, and the standard recommendation is 1.36. And our emission, carbon emission is 0.86, which is very, very excellent. This thing that our dietary practices are very good practices by which you can actually say that this is a ecosystem friendly dieting practices of RDI. Recently, new RDI has been issued. To the panelists, please, you can obtain this RDI by the writing to the NIN, or it may be available on your website. Please download, where we have made lot of modifications based on the new calculation and the data availability and the deficiencies, as well as keeping in view the present dietary composition. I mean to say, I'm just giving you one example of a rice. The rice grown 20 years back composition is quite different than the rice grown composition today. The reason soil, reason climate, reason many things, we have made the utilization or utilization that you have to really think. So you have to use this RDI, our table book, as a gadget. And that gadget book will give you the correct confirmation of it. Now I am just I'm a pharmacologist. I have become a nutritionist after becoming, so I have a rare combination of nutritional pharmacology evaluation. I am among the few, sir, first time in you about 98 or 97 issue, where we were planning to have how the turmeric works on the mutagen. I am giving you the evidence-based work, how we evaluated. A cigarette smoker releases certain amount of mutagens in the urine. And when we give turmeric tablet, which is having a 2% curcumin. So I am using a word standardization with a word that, yes, this makes a lot of sense if a 2% curcumin tablet, and when we have given this turmeric tablet to the cigarette smoker who smokes at least 12 cigarettes in a day, his mutagen load has come down by 40%. This is an evidence-based publication which you can just look into. Now, I will expand further to this turmeric to curcumin, where you can just see in one of the districts of the Srikakulam, where they take the reverse smoking. What do you mean by reverse smoking? They keep the burn end in the mouth, and most of the time, female folk use this smoking, and they will get lot of oral leukoplatic cancers. And the painting with turmeric and a curcumin reduces 30 to 40%. This is also a evidence-based publication which you can log on. Now, I am just coming to when Sir was mentioning that tulsi, ginger, then ashwagandha. These studies are very well designed, planned, executed, published in some of the leading journals, and they have been done by the ICMR. I can tell you from NIN itself, we may be having 30 to 40 publications validating the claims, which type of tulsi. There are 5 types of tulsis I can understand. There is 2 or 3 tulsis have shown a very potential immunomodulatory effect. I was also the principal investigator for the Golden Triangle program. Many institutes failed, but National Institute of Nutrition has developed this animal model at our place, and we have screened more than 12 natural products which are having immunomodulation, out of which 2 or 3 could not come to the level to declare them as immunomodulation. Perhaps they may be having some other activity. Now, I'm just coming to the second phase. I have some 2, 3 dietitians who are working as a PhD scholar. Here in ICMR, we have a cocktail. That means we don't have the PhD that I should pharmacologist, I should take a pharmacologist. No, I have one dietitian, one pharmacist, one Ayurveda doctor who are my PhD students. One of the dietitian and one of the Ayurvedic doctor, they identified by doing a vigilance study. Vigilance study is that in Vijayawada, the product name is Shibbitige, which is called as a gel, and it is in a jelly form, which now Sun Pharma is using for drug delivery system. This Shibbitige is having the some properties, and these are consumed by the local population to reduce the risk of a disease. Then I am coming to the next plant, that is Amarbel. This Amarbel is a plant which is present in the Himalayas, which is a parasitic plant. But in Himalayas, those people don't use it as dietary supplement, but they use whenever there is a snake bite or wound healing or any other purpose. That means ethnic practices and the plant products have to be correlated. And these practices, until unless you correlate, you may be very difficult to go to the herbal nutraceuticals or developing any herbaceuticals. Sir, I may like to mention one concern. Concern is that Indian herb patent law is very, very weak. Even 20, 30 years are gone. I don't know on why this our people are not taking interest, whether the single plant of Indian herb can be patented or not. But if you go to other places, it can be patented. But this matter is a very serious matter. I should go to the current government ears that this patent has to be revised, and if otherwise we are going to lose that of biodiversity. Now, this why I just mention the patent is that we are facing some of the problems with some 2, 3 product patent. Will be giving you one practical example. The practical example is like this. Sheer park.
Sorry.
2 minutes I will take, sir, if you permit.
Yeah.
Sheer park. Sheer park is made by the Arjuna. Sheer park, if you give anti-inflammatory property shown excellently, but if I give separately, it will not show antioxidant property. So we have to go by the traditional procedures, and we have to make the things in such a way that we get evidence-based generated data. So I can share as the discussions go on, many products which we have evaluated, I can share with you. Thanks for giving me to encourage the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. Very useful, and my apologies for interrupting in between because of the time limitation that we have, but we'll come back to some of the discussion. I think it's very much similar to what we have been discussing. It's a move towards science, evidence-based, and how do we bring more robustness? And I think it's very much in line with the theme that we have been discussing. Let me invite my next guest, Dr. Lakshmi Mundakar. who is Vice President Biological R&D at Sami Sabina's group. It would be useful to understand, Dr. Mundukar, from you, from R&D point of view, especially when it comes to herbal nutraceutical. What challenges are you facing, and how do you see this progressing? And then we take it from there. I know you guys are unable to hear me that well. I'm trying my best from technology point of view. But Dr. Lakshmi, were you able to understand my question or the pitch?
No, I could not get your question at all. I was trying to listen.
Okay, can I try again?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
How do you see the challenges in herbal nutraceutical from R&D point of view? What's your view? Where do you see we are going with this?
See, the challenges, like as a scientist, like I have moved from the chemical drugs to nutraceutical drugs. So I started with chemicals and then I moved on to nutraceuticals. The challenge being like see the standardized extracts. That is what is the biggest challenge. If you look at the chemicals, they are always like 90%, 99% pure. But in herbal extracts, you have different percentages, different. Every time you extract, you may not get the same molecule. So the standardization of the herbal extract plays a very important role when it comes to scientific validation. So I think in Sami Sabansa group, that is one of our strengths, that we have quite a few standardized extracts where every time we extract that particular molecule, we know that it has got this much percentage of the active molecule. So that is where I think we stand out, and then we are able to do a lot of scientific studies. Do I answer your question?
Yeah, very much. Are you able to hear me better now? Because I have
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it is better. It is better. Thank you.
Okay, my apologies. So Dr. Lakshmi, how do you see, especially R&D space when it comes to herbal nutraceutical? Where do you see the direction, where it is going? Because the way I see is that entire nutraceutical space was more originated from pharmaceutical industry, and therefore the delivery method, the manufacturing method, the quality control remain very much sort of mirroring pharmaceutical processes. Now, if I look at herbal natural space, I see variation up to many degrees. I mean, ingredient level, the formats level. For example, we are seeing gummies now, which are becoming very popular, especially pectin based or gelatin based. We are seeing, as earlier speaker was mentioning, we are seeing like turmeric, we are seeing ashwagandha, we are seeing tulsi that are becoming popular. How do you see the overlay of the practices and principles of nutraceuticals versus herbal nutraceuticals moving forward? And do you see sort of cross fertilization of the learnings, but keeping the uniqueness as well? And I dare to say that in the mix, there is Ayurveda as well, which is ancient old practice that we have, which comes with the limitation, because you cannot go beyond the Ayurvedic books when it comes to the product proposition, formulations, and control as well. So any thoughts around that would be valuable for our audience and for the discussion.
Yeah, so the nutraceuticals, I think it is going through a phenomenal expansion now. Like a lot of people have kind of accepted nutraceuticals to give them some kind of benefit to their general health. And yes, as you said, like earlier, it was just Ayurveda and the Ayurvedic medications, and now we have moved on to different formulations, different, I mean, not just tablets or a capsule, but then we have different, probably it is in the form of drinks, it's in the form of so many different formulations which are more acceptable for people to take. So that is one of the probably a new direction that we are going into. And yes, the scientific validation for all these nutraceuticals, that plays a very important role. So when you have a scientific validation, you have studies which are published, which are clinically studied, and then there is more acceptance for these nutraceuticals in the coming days. That's what is my thought.
No, thank you for sharing. And the last one, if I could ask, Mrs. Khosla talked about microbiome and gut health, which is a space of interest for me as well. Historically, if you look at in our culture, Ayurveda and everywhere, from chas to lassi to dahi, wherever you look at, that's what it is. And what we are learning more about microbiome and gut being the second brain of our body, there are various aspects are being explored from food to drug, which microbiome and probiotic or prebiotic can do. How do you see this again merging in sort of natural nutraceuticals, if I could call it the beyond herbal nutraceutical? How do you see that direction going? I mean, there are a number of challenges, again, from R&D point of view, from quality point of view, from regulatory point of view. US FDA is still making up their mind in terms of how they are going to look at microbiome, especially with the vast application of microbiome. And the spectrum is so huge, then having one regulatory framework may not work. But more from R&D, science, formulation point of view, how do you see this evolving, especially bringing, I could see now Ayurveda, natural supplements, and pharmaceutical science and technology together into one sort of mix. Any thoughts? I would be happy to. I just wanted to take the leverage to hear from you.
The microbiome, of course, as you said, it's one of the major aspects now which is coming up. And microbiome is it's probably one of the most important organs when it comes to the immunity also. So it's your gut and the gut microbiome which plays a very, very important role in building up your immunity as you grow from a child to as you understand the immune system. So the gut, any disturbances in the gut can affect all your organs. Though we just don't understand it, but a simple dysregulation of your gut can affect all from your brain to your liver to your lungs, and most it affects all your organs. So coming to the nutraceuticals, what we call as prebiotics, or even if you take curcumin, which has been very widely spoken also today, curcumin has a role in modulating your gut microbiome. So it kind of relieves your dysbiosis, and it makes your what I can call them good bacteria propagate. So that way, if you see, curcumin is not the only nutraceutical, but then there are several herbs which have an impact on the gut. So by modulating your gut, it kind of indirectly has an effect on different organs. So we try to understand it, not just the curcumin per se, what it can do, but it can also have a lot of indirect effects by modulating your gut. So there is going to be a phenomenal expansion in these kind of scientific studies where your nutraceuticals and their role in the gut dysbiosis and how it's affecting all the other organs and the disease per se is going to be definitely a huge platform to study in the coming days. And that will be, we do have some scientific evidence, and I mean, especially for curcumin, we have a lot of scientific evidence to say that curcumin can have an effect on the gut biases. But then, like, this is a scientific area which is expanding, and we are also trying to do a lot more studies on this aspect.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. That has been very insightful. I also recognize that you have a presentation to share with us.
I have a small presentation. I'll go through it quickly
Please.
so that I don't take up too much time of yours.
No, not at all. Please take your time.
Yeah, so thank you so much for this invitation, and it's really a privilege to be in amongst all these eminent panelists here. So I'll go through this presentation pretty quickly. So can I do it, or it will be done from your side, the changing the slides?
I will run it. Yeah.
Okay, so can I go to the next one? Can I have the next one, please?
Yeah, just a moment.
Yeah.
If you can do, Lakshmi, you can do at your end. Then it will be more easy.
Yeah, but I'm not able to have, I'm not able to move the slides from here.
Okay, okay.
So I just wanted to talk about the nutraceuticals and basically focusing on the COVID-19 and the pandemic, and all of us are facing a lot of hardships now, and how nutraceuticals can be very helpful during this period. So, like we are all talking about health conscious end users and the organic food and all that in the, I mean, presently, and there is a consistent demand for minimally processed food, and nutraceuticals definitely fit into this criteria. So, can I have the next one? So nutraceuticals, as this particular webinar is focusing on the antioxidant effects, I just thought to tell you that it is just not the antioxidant, but nutraceuticals have a lot of other properties, anti-inflammatory, they are antimicrobial, and then this kind of all these properties can be, that's why they are pretty much useful in almost all the functions, the lung, heart, liver, or anything you take, nutraceuticals have a very good activity. So can I have the next one? So now, being from the scientific background, I thought I'll go a little deeper into what actually oxidative stress is and what antioxidants are. So basically, it is a balance between free radicals and antioxidants. So free radicals are something which are generated when even when the cells are metabolizing, and the cells have their own mechanism of neutralizing them and bringing it back to normal. So anywhere in our body, the balancing is very, very important. So the free radicals can be generated by all these pollution, radiation, processed food, UV light, so virus infection. So all these can generate a lot of free radicals. And your antioxidant enzymes like your SOD or your superoxide dismutase, these are some enzymes I'm talking about. We can neutralize them and bring your system back to normal. And as you age, of course, your oxidative stress goes up. And that is why probably you need take some of these polyphenols and your phytonutrients, which are antioxidants in nature, to bring your system back to normal. Can I have the next one? So oxidative stress is a basis of many diseases, as you can see here. It affects all parts of your body. The next one. So I'll focus today on the antioxidant nutraceuticals, especially for COVID-19. Next one. How do the nutraceuticals work? The nutraceuticals can actually, they can directly neutralize your free radicals, or they can indirectly affect the enzymes, increase the antioxidant enzymes, and that's how they can bring down the oxidative stress. Or they can also have they can chelate the metals so they don't induce ROS. Or the fourth possibility is these antioxidants can reduce the effects of your free radicals. They reduce inflammation, they improve cell survival, and that is how these nutraceuticals help in bringing about an antioxidant activity. So coming to the next one, when you talk about the viral infection. So what happens when this COVID virus infects? It infects your lungs and it causes what is known as hypoxia, and which increases the reactive oxygens, or which leads to an oxidative stress. And this oxidative stress can actually cause what is known as the a lot of inflammation which develops, and which leads to less respiratory failure and circulatory disturbances. So that's how this oxidative stress is related to the viral infection. So the next one. So do we have clinical evidence for it? So a lot of people talked about clinical relevance today. So clinical evidence for this is like there were clinical studies where it was found that plasma concentrations of antioxidants like vitamin C, A, E, and then the enzymes which are involved in antioxidant activity, were significantly lower in COVID patients. So this shows that COVID-19 patients are having an oxidative stress. And inflammatory molecules were higher in the COVID patients. So this antioxidant nutrients would definitely be very helpful. So the next one. So I'll talk about only, there are plenty of nutrients which can be used, but I'll focus on just two of them. One being our turmeric, which a lot of people have already talked about, but I'll just say that curcumin, which is our curcuminoids as we call it, because it's a mixture of three different molecules. The curcumin, uh, dimethoxycurcumin and bis-dimethoxycurcumin. So they are together known as curcuminoids. So this is one of the phenolic, very potent antioxidant. And how does it work? It kind of inhibits from the attachment of the virus to its penetration, replication, biosynthesis, assembly, and release. So these are all scientifically proven that the curcumin molecule can have an inhibition on all these activities. So it has a good antiviral as well as antioxidant activity. So coming to the next one, uh, like we did talk about, some of the panelists did talk about the micronutrients and how micronutrients are so important. So here, the one of the micronutrients that we are very passionate about is the selenium. It is not much talked about because probably it's not much known. But then I would like to say that this selenium, when it goes into your body, forms selenoproteins, which is one of the major selenoproteins are this antioxidant enzymes like glutathione peroxidase and thioredoxin reductases. These are all enzymes which are antioxidants. So the next one. So selenium, there are recent studies which have shown that selenium can increase if you have a deficiency in selenium, it can increase the pathogenicity and virulence of RNA viruses. So this is proven. And selenium supplementation can be helpful in other cases also, like heart diseases, neurodegenerative, and apart from viral infection. The next one. So in the recently we conducted a study from SAMI labs in Indian population where we found out that the serum selenium levels were significantly lower in COVID-19 patients. When you compare them with normal or a healthy individual, their levels were significantly lower. And this kind of experiments clinical studies were earlier done in Germany and in China, where also they found that selenium levels were lower in COVID patients. The next one. So what happens when you take selenium supplements is when the dietary selenium, it gets incorporated into the selenoproteins, and these selenoproteins are antioxidants, and they have an activity on improving your immunity, and they reduce the inflammation, and they reduce the oxidative stress, which this oxidative stress can actually induce mutations in the virus, and it can increase the virulence of the virus. So by taking dietary selenium, you can actually prevent all these aspects which are happening with the virus. So the next one. So there are several other phytonutrients. I just thought I'll mention about resveratrol and licorice and anthocyanins and amla. These are some of the most potent antioxidants that are available in the phytonutrients. And the list continues. I cannot possibly put everything in this slide, but then what I would like to say right now is diet and food supplements are promising, highly promising for managing COVID-19 and the other complications which are arising out of this infection. And a strong clinical research data, as our earlier speakers were also talking about scientific evidences, a strong clinical research data in large population would help in popularizing these herbal nutraceuticals for their therapeutic benefits. Thank you so much for your patient listening.
Thank you, Dr. Lakshmi. Very, very insightful and very, very helpful. I'm just going to check one more time that you can hear me okay, right?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you. Okay, thanks.
Very good. Thank you very much. I think it's a continuation of the discussion of the topic that how to bring more science in herbal nutraceutical. And I'm so happy to see that what your organization is doing to progress the agenda. So thank you. And we'll come back to some specific question that we have on the chat. May I please invite our next guest, Dr. Deepika Ganju Gunwant, who is Senior Consultant Ayurveda Wellness at Max Multi-Speciality Center in New Delhi. Again, wonderful profile, very experienced expert in this space. I think you have heard the discussion, Dr. Deepika, so far. And
yes,
again,
yes, I have. Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you very well. And what I was saying is that, especially around herbal nutraceutical, and you are at the juncture of, if I could dare to say, allopathic and naturopathy sort of space. How do you see that tension, if I could call it positive tension at that juncture, especially with experts, the physicians, the patients, the caregivers, the families? How do you see they adopt and take? Of course, it's part of our culture, it's part of our society. But when it comes to health and illness and treatment, do you see sort of pushback on some of those approaches which may not have that level of robustness of data and science? It would be really good to hear your perspective. And then, of course, your colleague Manjari Chandra as well. We would love to hear her view from more therapeutics and functional nutrition point of view. But Dr. Deepika, you first, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Arunji, and thank you, Pasnaji, and thank you, Team ASSOCHAM, for inviting me. Before I really get on to the efficacy part and talk about the various categories that are regulated by the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, let me answer your question. Well, I haven't faced any sort of, what would I say, stopping me from giving my patients the Ayurvedic treatment. In fact, a lot of my colleagues who are core allopathic doctors do recommend patients, and I see patients who have been treated and who have to undergo integrative sort of a therapy. So there isn't anything of that sort that I have faced in my 3.5 decades of practice and about 10-12 years of practice in Max in Delhi right now. So that's something that I just can't take it because it doesn't happen. In public, it may be happening, but I think we must also understand the borders and the limitations, because we know the modern medicine has the advantage of advanced critical care, which we cannot deny. But then there is a lot more that Ayurveda and nutraceuticals and health supplements can offer. Now, before I really get on to the efficacy part, which is the topic for discussion, let me quickly, just because we have limited time, so let me just talk about the various categories of, Ayurvedic products or nutraceuticals, whatever category you put it in, that are regulated under Drugs and Cosmetics Act. There are two major categories. One is the classical Ayurvedic category, which is the traditional products, and the other is the proprietary. The classical products are all formulations from the textbooks, which are approved textbooks, and so the formulations cannot move here or there, but there is a substitution list because many of the botanical ingredients aren't available now. So that list you can refer to and you can manufacture a product. And you don't need a clinical study or a clinical data to validate the claims which are as per the textbook. The second is the proprietary, where there is a necessity to do efficacy studies, to do clinical studies, because the permutation and combination, though the reference is taken from the books, has to be substantiated through clinical studies for those specific claims. Then we also have the extracts. We heard so much from SAMI Labs, the extracts. There are various forms of extracts. Some of them are used as raw material, some of them are used as finished product and with specific claims. For example, the curcumin one, the ashwagandha one. Then we have the nutraceutical category, the FSSAI regulations, which talks about health supplements, nutraceuticals, foods for special dietary needs, and then food for medical purpose. So there are a whole lot of categories that are available around us, and some of them need efficacy studies, some of them don't, because they have a long-standing history of use. So now coming to the efficacy part. You see, we must understand there's a difference between efficacy and effectiveness. Now, if you look at the traditional text formulations, they all can be, proved on the basis of effectiveness. They have a long-standing history. And what better example would we see in the last year and a half? This health crisis has shown us. Where are the efficacy studies? There's not even an iota of evidence for remdesivir being used. There's not an iota of ivermectin being used, plasma being used. 3 months you use it, and after that we hear the news that no, it doesn't work in COVID. So this is a very living example that we have seen that what is effective should also be considered, and that's where the Ayurvedic formulations do come in. I don't deny that efficacy is needed. We need to look at evidence-based medicine. We need to carry on with that work. And I know this helps us to understand what works and what doesn't work. But having said that, for me, the greater concern today is the quality and the safety. And believe me, being a practitioner, I know how difficult it is to get a good quality product. And we need to understand that the quality suffers because of various reasons. It could be the contamination of our botanical ingredients, contamination of the herbs. It could be the non-compliance to the GMP requirements, or those guidelines that I mentioned. And keeping that in mind, the Quality Council of India did start a scheme way back in 2011. And this was a joint venture between Quality Council of India and Ayush. And I was fortunate enough to be part of that whole team that developed that scheme. And it has got 2 levels, a standard certification for Ayush. It's a voluntary certification scheme program. So a standard and a premium certification. The standard certification is given to those products that are compliant 100% with the domestic regulatory requirements, like Schedule T in Ayurveda and other parameters that they are tested for. The premium is based on the WHO GMP requirements, which means that the WHO GMP has framed certain guidelines for herbals. And right now we just have it for herbals because there aren't any reference standards for minerals, metals, which are also used in our Ayurvedic products, but those can fall under the standard category. So these are the 2 categories that are available. And I definitely feel that quality must be addressed at all levels. I just saw a chat, somebody had put in a question about third-party assurance systems, and here we are. It's been there for the last 10 years. So I wish that the 9,000 units that are in Ayush do come forward and take it up and understand how important it is for consumer confidence, building a consumer confidence. So the quality is a major issue, quality and safety. So I would really focus on quality. While studies are happening, the quality issues should be taken on war footing and should be addressed. Whether it's the raw material or whether it's a finished product, we must understand quality is something that we should not compromise on. And therefore, for me, the 3 keys to product success would be compliance on quality, claims, and clinical studies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And very much to the point. And I saw the comment in the chat as well, and I about to prompt that. But thank you for responding. And I agree. I think the concerns and the data that we see around quality might sort of impact the risk-benefit assessment of the product. And therefore, that's the critical that we need to keep in mind. And we'll come back to some of those points, but thank you for sharing your thinking around on this topic around efficacy, especially. And I like the idea, and I was intrigued, and I think that's something we perhaps further look into is effectiveness versus evidence-based.
Efficacy, yes.
And what I mean to say is that Ayurveda is based on our traditional use for thousands and thousands of years. And that's effectiveness. That's effective. When my daddy used to give me with her mixture of kadha when I had cold, and I was absolutely fine. That's effectiveness. Now, we may not have endpoint data to suggest that it has made a statistically significant difference in the clinical endpoint. That is evidence-based. So lack of evidence doesn't suggest that there is no effectiveness. I think how do we bring that thinking framework bit further and have larger consensus would be a key area to look at. I mean, clearly we cannot conduct phase 3 clinical studies of all thousands and millions of Ayurvedic nutrients. And why? I will ask the prominent question why, especially if you have a effectiveness framework based on the uses of thousands of years, would that not be enough? Or do we really need a controlled number of handful patient data? I mean, I'm going with against with my beliefs. I mean, I have spent 2 decades in pharmaceutical industry, and that's what I have done. But having learned professionals like you, that sort of thoughts will provoke, and we ought to look into and follow some of those thinkings. So thank you again for sharing. Let me invite my next guest, Ms. Manjari Chandra, who is a consultant therapeutic and functional nutrition at Max Healthcare. Again, very learned colleague, expert in this space. And I will pose Ms. Manjari the same question that we just had with Dr. Deepika. How do you see the bridge? How do you see the divide? And therefore, how do you see it's moving not only from social acceptance point of view, but more clinical acceptance point of view as well? Because if I could say mandir of the clinical therapy is the hospital, and therefore, how do you see the acceptance of this in that sort of setup? And then I would like to sort of bring it to sort of a conclusion of themes and seek your views and thinking around, and then we take it from there. So, Ms. Manjari, and I'm very grateful that you are with us. Thank you for being with us and would love to hear your point of view.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mishra. Thank you so much for the question. Thank you, everybody, all the panelists. Thank you, Payal. Thank you, everybody at ASSOCHAM for having me in this very nice discussion. As you asked, Mr. Mishra, I am working in the functional nutrition space, which is mostly integrative nutrition. So in classical terms, nutrition was essentially used in a therapeutic setting, which means that, when we were treating patients or handling patients in hospitals, most of the time what we were doing is that the primary role was done by the consultants and the physicians and the main healthcare takers, which were the main doctors. The nutrition became an adjunct sort of a treatment, which means it was just one of the things that was done to keep the patient afloat and to keep him in good health. However, we have now moved to another way of looking at nutrition and nutraceuticals, which is actually using it as a mainline therapy. So not looking at it only as an additional or a supportive therapy, but more as a mainline therapy. And when you look at the term functional, essentially integrative or functional means that you're trying to use the body's own mechanisms, the human physiology, human metabolic pathways to heal the body instead of only depending on pharmaceuticals and other forms of similar clinical treatments, which is modern medicine. So there is a huge gap that does exist, which means that when we're looking at now, of course, infection is on everybody's mind with COVID around, but for many, many years, we've handled all forms of non-communicable diseases, all forms of cardiometabolic conditions, including cancer. And somehow the treatment from modern medicine has been mostly based on surgery, pharmaceuticals, and radiation, and such forms of treatments. We've not made it integrative in the sense we've not used the body's innate mechanisms and many other, super form of nutraceuticals, minerals, vitamins, phytochemicals, phytonutrients, flavonoids, antioxidants in the way we could have used it. And I think today the space that we are going to eventually, move forward to will be a space, as Dr. Deepika also said, of combining the modern medicine, which of course has its huge potential. It has its own I mean, so many things that we can talk about, from trauma to emergency to, ICUs to all forms of surgical treatments that only allopathy can offer, to mixing it with other forms of disciplines. And we need not really differentiate between naturopathy and Ayurveda and nutraceuticals. All of it has to come together. Only then it becomes integrative. And thankfully, I've been doing some of it, especially in the reversal of cardiometabolic conditions. So whether we're looking at, improving patients with cancer, not just with chemotherapy and radiation, but more with using the body's systems, to just give you an example, a simple act of fasting is one of the very, very important methodology that can be used to terminate cancer. We know that cancerous cells do not survive after 10 to 12 hours of fasting. A lot of them cannot survive that. So using those concepts of, of naturopathy, of fasting, of using the body's innate healing mechanisms, using our sleep, using our stress management, and using nutraceuticals. And food as medicine is eventually where we will eventually end up. And that is, I think, the best form of medicine that we can have, which is integrative in all its forms, not just in the form that we try to put everything together, but also do not forget the human body has an innate capacity to heal itself. So one of the very common examples, when a lot of people, when we try to tell them that they can reverse their diabetes or they can reverse some amount of cancer or improve that only with using food and their own body systems, they sort of, not agree to it initially. So one of the common examples that I give them is that, if I break my hand and I have a fracture and my hand and my bone breaks into two, all I need to do is put a cast. If I put a cast, the bone can literally join itself back. That's how strong the human healing mechanism is. We need to use that. And that is why modern medicine will have to join hands with every other form of integrative therapy. Nutraceuticals have a very, very big role to play in it. And as we discover more and more potency of not just a herbal medicine, but also minerals and vitamins and phytochemicals, we'll be able to come with a space where, I'll give you another example. A lot of cancer patients are magnesium depleted, hugely depleted in magnesium. And one of the reasons they have a lot of aches and pains is because they are magnesium depleted. So there, you can fit in simple things like sources of magnesium and magnesium as an active nutraceutical. A lot of thyroid patients don't just need the thyronorm, they also need other nutrients, like somebody was speaking about selenium and zinc and magnesium and iodine and potassium, a lot of other things that are required for the thyroid function to happen normally. So I think we're in a space, Mr. Mishra, where everything will eventually come together on a platform, which is the best platform for the patient, because not only is he getting the benefit of modern medicine, he's also getting the benefit of the human healing capacity and the power of our old naturopathy, Ayurveda, gut cleansing, our own, systems of sleep and stress management and pranayam. When everything comes together, it becomes a beautiful, beautiful space for the patient also to be. And I think that's a perfect healing platform also. So nutraceuticals, because people have spoken in detail about it, I'm not going to go there into details, but we are using high potency nutraceuticals, very, very high doses and intravenous forms of micronutrients to manage a lot of clinical conditions. So there's a long way for nutraceuticals, phytochemicals, herbal medicines, botanicals to go for sure. And more, and I will completely agree with what you and Dr. Deepika were saying, which is not just evidence-based, but also efficacy. We know that these things are effective. So we know that sleep is an effective mechanism to manage human health. So let's use it without really getting into just, doing the clinical trials, which would be an ideal thing to do, but until we are able to do it completely. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manjari. Very useful insights. And I agree. It's a holistic approach and integrated approach. That's what we are looking at. And if I could look at the discussion so far, the concept is coming to my mind is sort of if you split the healthcare into three buckets, one would be preventive care, the second could be self-care, and the third could be prescription care. And when you integrate these three, I see a clear role of herbal nutraceutical or integrated approach in all three buckets of the spectrum, whether it's a preventive care, self-care, or therapeutic care, or prescription care. I see more acceptance of herbal supplements or Ayurveda more into preventive care and more into self-care. And there is a growing acceptance in prescription care space as well. And I think that's where we are moving as we go. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. There are a number of questions that I want to go through that our audience has asked. And
Mr.
I would,
Arunji, can we
yeah.
announce our award first because Mr. Majid has some other engagement?
Oh,
So,
definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. So Upasana ji, over to you, and then I'll pick up the Q&A.
Yeah, so I am really happy to announce that ASSOCHAM has selected Mr. Majid as a father of Indian nutraceutical industry, and we are going to present this award to him. It is honor for us that he is here with us. So Mr. Majid, kindly accept this award, and we are just congratulating you. Everybody is congratulating you because everybody cannot speak right now. Yeah. Hope you are here.
I'm here, and thank you very much. Thank you.
So
I'm on.
So now over to you, Mr. Arun.
Thank you, Upasana ji. And first of all, huge congratulations to Dr. Majid. And I really want to thank you for your contribution in this space, for the country, for the sector, and your guidance, your path forward will help us, continuously help us to take India to the next level. So again, thank you very much, and congratulations to you and to the entire team.
Thank you.
There are a number of questions which I will perhaps not go through each, but there are clearly emerging themes. And one theme, if I could say, that people who are not able to hear me, and I apologize for that. I hope it's a better audience now, and you are able to hear me well. I think one area came out very clearly is the quality space, and we talked about that, and Deepika touched upon is the quality and focus on quality and how critical it is. Yes, third-party assurance or any sort of assurance will be required. Sort of having a robust quality assurance framework and enforcement of that would become critical. So we have addressed that part. The other question which we have, which is quite interesting, and I would love to hear the answer of that as well. Is there any, Rohit has asked, is there any relation of weather in efficacy of herbal nutraceutical? Anyone from the panel would like to answer that question? That is there, yes, Deepika ji, please.
In Ayurveda, there is certainly. It depends upon the climatic condition. When the herb is picked, it has a role to play. It does affect the potency of the herb. So okay. Climatic conditions do have a role to play. And it's very clearly mentioned in our textbooks.
Oh, very good. I didn't
on the climatic conditions on the geographical region as well. So sometimes what happens is, I think Lakshmi would be able to give a better answer on that. If you pick it up from South India and you pick up same herb from North India, there'll be some difference in the phytoconstituents, sometimes. So there is a role to play, yes.
I absolutely agree.
Okay, very good. Something I learned new today. Yes, Dr. Dinesh, you're saying something.
What Madam is mentioning is 100% correct. We have to collect as per the description mentioned in their pharmacopoeia, the collection of the plant. Like I'm just giving you, sir, I may not like to reveal the name of a plant. One of the grass, after 7 months, will not show a activity. We have to correct between the 4 to 7 months. And the principles which are there, which biomarkers which we can derive, they also vary more than 30%, which is against the norms of the these things, sir. That is 100% correct, sir. What Madam is telling, we have to go by the descriptions which they have made. There are some logics in that.
Dr. Majid, you are here. Would you like to say something?
I was thinking something else. If you can repeat the question, I will answer.
No, I just wanted to ask you regarding you have got a prestigious award. So what you are thinking about that? Yeah.
No, that I was thinking that very, very kind of you guys. But what I was thinking was where Dr. Deepika said that, it depends on the time and depends on the region. And, Ayurvedic, the product will change. And Ayurveda has gone through a tremendous change, which we are not considering. You see, the last 50 years back, we didn't have pesticides on this earth. We didn't have pesticide weedicides. Just give you a simple example, Bacopa boniri. We use it, it's called a Brahmi. But today, we grow that in the paddy fields, and we have a pesticide comes along with the Bacopa boniri called the tricyclosol. Now, we are all immune to that one because we eat rice. And as part of rice eaters, we eat tricyclosol as part of our food. But as a herbal nutraceutical, tricyclosol is not acceptable. It's a 10 ppm level, 10 ppb level. So we have to clean it up. So today, herbal industry is different. Whatever is said in the text is sacred. But today we have to understand what this world has gone through. Today we are picking up DDT in our herbal products. So a lot of things will affect, and that is why standardization is an absolute must.
Thank you. I agree. I think that's an important point as well. Dr. Majid, can I ask another question from our audience? Dr. Sanjay Sharma has asked a question that views around how to conduct studies on food products, especially functional food or food product which has micronutrient fortified, having potential for supporting conditions in COVID-19 patient when they are not therapeutic. As of now, there is no body who approves such studies. It's quite an interesting question. So I would love to hear your views, and any other panel member would like to share that.
Let me take a first shot at that one. We just did that one. In 2020, we did a study looking at the selenium levels of Indians. Indians are low in selenium. We never heard that before. We know about selenium is low in China, and because of that, they have Cushing disease. That we know. But how do we ever look at the selenium levels of Indians? In some parts of India, selenium level is high. In some parts of India, selenium is very low. It's a micro mineral. 50 years back, it was a toxic chemical. About 30 years back, it is an essential mineral. So it's a trace mineral, 40 microgram we allow in India. And if you look at the selenium level, we did two studies, one out of Chennai, one out of Bangalore. And we found our selenium levels are 69 microgram and 79 microgram. People who have 69 microgram level have 43% got COVID. People who had 79, 20% got COVID. So there's a direct relationship between an essential mineral and COVID. Now, worldwide, they think the average should be around 98.75 microgram to be safe. This is known to us now. They're making it public now. This study that we said last year is published also. And we have to go in and do the studies as per the modern allopathic standards. That we do. And we are now continuing the study also. Here, we are looking at prevention, not treatment, prevention. If you have selenium sufficient, you may avoid getting COVID. That's all. That's my piece.
And if it is in COVID patients, what's your view?
Severity should come down. The severity should come down. And again, that's an unproven statement, like the remdesivir that we are injecting into people with no knowledge whether it will work or not. It never worked, but we are still trying. But if the higher the selenium level, lower is your difficulties with COVID. That much I can make a statement.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other panel member? Yes, Dr. Deepika, please.
While we're talking about micronutrients, I think we should not forget the spices, our kitchen spices. Many of them are very rich in selenium. And we've forgotten the use of these spices. We must use these spices. I'm not saying in large quantities, but they're meant to be used in very small quantities. So that's why they have micronutrients. And I think, if I remember right, fenugreek, even curcumin, turmeric has selenium in it. And even if you're using very tiny quantities when we are cooking, you'll get some amount of it. Apart from selenium, there is magnesium, there's other micronutrients.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Any other panel member would like to share their thinking? Okay, well, let me summarize a few thoughts that came out in this discussion. First of all, thank you so very much. This conversation can go on and on because it's so interesting and it's so relevant in today's world. But what I heard in couple of, and let me dare to summarize that. If you look at more from healthcare spectrum point of view, from preventive wellness, preventive care, self-care, and prescription care point of view, nutraceutical has a role to play in all three sort of spaces. Herbal nutraceutical has a role to play, or nutraceutical as such, or micronutrients have a role to play all in all three buckets. And that's very evident. In fact, in the current crisis, I don't know if you have seen the study recently, NUS, National University of Singapore, published a study of 360,000 patients of 16 country meta-analysis of data of different clinical trials. And what they found is that patients who were not deficient in micronutrients, they were better off from infection, hospitalization, recovery point of view versus the patient who were deficient. It's a very hardcore data, 60,000, 16 countries. It's a hardcore data. And again, we don't need to prove it in terms of rule, even in the current crisis. That's a well established. I think the other element which came out very clearly is that there is no one approach. It has to be holistic and integrated approach when it comes to wellness, when it comes to preventive care, even in therapeutic care, as some of our experts suggested, that how it can be integrated effectively in prescription care as well. And it's relevant in that point. I think especially coming to herbal supplement, two things came out very clearly. One area was in terms of how do you balance out effectiveness versus evidence base. And I think that's one discussion we need to continue and really find a balance versus effectiveness and evidence base, and not necessarily boil the ocean and not necessarily discard the 5,000 years of human experience that we have with that. And how do we bring the balance is one space that we need to continue our discussion dialogue in the ecosystem. I think the second came out very clearly is quality, that we need to be really tighten our belt, so to say, not only in herbal nutraceutical sort of space, but in around herbal Ayurveda space. How do we ensure quality and safety of the product, especially when we argue that effectiveness is based on 5,000 years old practices? what becomes more relevant and important is quality and safety of the product, and therefore consumers of those products as well. And that's something, again, as a country, as a government, as an organization, as an industry, we need to continue to focus. So I think that's the third area. And the last area, which came out very clearly as well, and let me just refer to my note, was move towards science. As we continue to really look into the effectiveness versus evidence base, there is a growing need of moving towards science when it comes to herbal nutrition. How do we approach this in more integrated way, not only from industry, but academia and government research institute, and really put a strategic priority around really generating science and data and understanding different properties of the ingredients that we have, the benefit that we have, and really bring it to the world and move towards science, not only from efficacy point of view, not only from claim point of view, not only from safety point of view, but also to include quality point of view and build the public trust in this space. And we are seeing this. I think the pandemic and this crisis has really pushed this envelope and the agenda of natural care, herbal nutraceutical around the world, and people are really looking into this. I think the time is right that how do we keep the momentum in that direction, and how do we continue to move towards science and bring more confidence of consumer in this space. And India could lead this as a global agenda and can be the pioneer, as many of us suggested as well. So those were my limited summary of this discussion. I really want to thank each and every panel member here. It's been a pleasure hosting you on this topic. And I really thank you again on behalf of ASSOCHAM and on behalf of the industry as well for your participation. I really thank all the participants taking time out and discussing and listening and sharing their views as well. With the last comment, and then I would like to invite Upasana ji for the closing remarks, is that I wish you all safety around you, your family members, your friends. I hope you are safe and well. It's a crisis time, unprecedented crisis time, if I could say, for every one of us and for the nation and for the world. I'm sure we will come out of this. Eventually, it will happen, and we can see already moving in that direction. But I again wish you stay safe and stay well. And thank you, ASSOCHAM, for inviting me to really host this panel. I thoroughly enjoyed. With that, I invite Mrs. Upasana Arora again for closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arun, for moderating this session beautifully. You have done it so beautifully. And thank you all the panelists. And actually, India is pioneer in herbal nutraceuticals, because this is, we are the one who was using it and who is giving to whole world. Everybody is following India now, because they have taken, as you can see, lots of other countries are now doing patent of neem and this tulsi, and they are just trying to make it for their, that they have invented it. But everybody knows that this is a property of India, and this is our dharohar, our sanskriti, our way of treating people. And this was the way we were keeping ourselves healthy and happy. And this is the high time when we can switch over again to this, because all the time we cannot depend only on modern medicine. There are, like after post-COVID, as you people were discussing beautifully, that how we can, you know, with the help of these plants and trees, we can remove our inflammation and we can keep ourselves healthy. So it's high time. So I am thankful to all my panelists and Arunji, and special thanks to ASSOCHAM, who has actually, ASSOCHAM is all the time creating a very wonderful events, which everybody is getting benefit. And I am going to share this link to all my groups and on Facebook. And it is my request to all of you that you should also share. So more people should get benefit from this, and all my panelists who has told us in a very simple manner that how to use and what to do to keep yourself always healthy, happy, and smart. Thank you so much. With these words, I am saying bye-bye to everyone and have a great day. See you soon. Hopefully we will meet again. Something will happen through ASSOCHAM and we will again meet here and discuss something more fruitful. Thanks a lot.
Thank you and stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you.